Jon Gardner here again to share some thoughts with you about homelessness and hopefully give you some motivation to get involved with my outreach program, Blinding Light. If you have thoughts to share on the subject, please comment on this video. I'd like to hear what other people think. Homelessness has been flourishing in the streets and alleys of our nation and many other nations since the dawn of modern civilization. Obviously, there have been major efforts throughout history to try and relieve the strain that this social epidemic puts on the people affected, as well as the communities around them. But for some reason, those who desire to help can never seem to eliminate the problem. Some might say that the homeless don't want to be helped. Others simply say that it's not their responsibility to worry. I'll come back to this statement in a minute. Let me share some statistics and stories with you. In January of 2005, the National Alliance to End Homelessness reported a point-in-time estimate of 744,313 people experiencing homelessness. There are, combined nationally, more homeless citizens than there are rooms to house them in emergency shelters. One way that communities can greatly impact our neighbors in need is to sponsor community supportive housing initiatives. A supportive housing solution can be defined as a flexible, integrated, long-term supportive facility that empowers those in need to make major changes in their lifestyle in order to secure permanent, sustainable housing for themselves. This not only offers the most critical kind of care to those with the motivation to make a positive change, but it also keeps them off the streets and helps them reintegrate into society. Another change that needs to happen in order to help the homeless and those around them is for communities to begin to reshape their attitudes towards those in need. A lot of people might stereotype homeless people as drunk, mean old men who have just given up on life. Nothing could be further from the truth. There are people from all races, nationalities, faiths, and professional backgrounds who at one point or another will find themselves without a roof over their head. Many of them are trying to support the families who have been forced to make their homes in the streets along with them. I myself was recently visited by a family of 7 who was living in a van on national park land. Now, Blinding Light being in the infant stages of creating our own supportive housing solution couldn't do much, but we witnessed firsthand the struggle that this family was going through. I didn't believe it at first, but throughout the day that we spent together, I became convinced that the father of this family was telling me the truth when he told me that just sitting down and talking with other people who were concerned was more than he could have asked for. This man never once asked for money, and his family was in need of an emotional connection, however temporary, and was more than thankful to share a meal with us at our table. It is socially irresponsible to try and categorize everyone together. Here was a family who was severely affected by the current economic downturn we find ourselves in, but was holding on to each other and focused on rebuilding their lives one step at a time. I'm happy to report that this family has since made their home in Kansas City, and the father is now gainfully employed. A few recent events in the lives of homeless men and women in national news will give you an idea of just how bad the opinion of the homeless is in pockets of the country. According to CBS News, a homeless man in my own hometown of Fredericksburg, Virginia, was set on fire without provocation and left for dead under the bridge he was attempting to sleep under. This man was burned so severely that he had to be transferred from the hospital he was originally taken to in order to receive more specialized treatment in Richmond. This kind of treatment of those men and women who lean on the support of the community around them is not indicative of a decent or moral society. In talking with several people about this, I found that many of them automatically resorted to thinking the absolute worst about this man, as they had been trained to do by the world they've been brought up in. Some claim that the man set himself on fire in a drunken confusion. Others say that this kind of behavior sometimes occurs when people simply desire the kind of treatment and care that is usually only afforded hospital patients. I find these initial reactions to be repulsive and certainly a symptom of a bigger problem. Another recent incident involved a man who the New York Times has coined the Good Samaritan, who ran to the aid of a complete stranger who was being mugged on the streets of Jamaica, New York. According to the Times report, the man witnessed an armed assailant mugging a lone female and witnessed her being stabbed by her attacker with a large knife. This man, recently identified as Hugo Alfredo Tail Yax, ran at the attacker and put himself directly in the path of this thug in order to allow the young woman time to flee. During the struggle, Mr. Taliax was stabbed several times and was left for dead on the busy sidewalk where the attack occurred. For more than an hour, Mr. Taliax lay in the street bleeding to death, while more than a dozen people walked by him, never offering to help. At one point, a young man pulled a cell phone out of his pocket, in what initially seemed like an attempt to call 911. But the footage released to the public shows that the man simply snapped a photo of the dying man and kept on walking. Mr. Taliax eventually died from his wounds. These two examples of the horrible mistreatment of our homeless brothers and sisters should serve to prove that more than the homeless themselves, it is the rest of society who needs a bigger adjustment. At the beginning of this video, I made the following statement. Some might say that the homeless don't want to be helped. Others simply say that it's not their responsibility to worry. But here's another point to consider. Through my research and experiences, I have discovered something that simply can't be put into words or captured on a pie chart. When society at large quantifies the resources that are available to those who are in need, it fails to factor in one important fact. The homeless of our society are not society at large. Once a person submits to living the rest of his or her life on the street, something changes inside. No longer do things like politics, religion, or social norms matter like they do to the rest of us. The ability to trust and to love also begins to diminish the moment the realization of the situation starts to set in. And from the examples given earlier, can we blame them? In order to fix the problem, we have to understand that the problem is a real person with valid feelings and with worthy contributions to make to society. I hesitate to even use the word homeless in speech, as it tends to categorize something that simply can't be categorized. The only feasible way to help our neighbors is to actually care about them. That doesn't mean that we pass out sandwiches to make ourselves feel better. It means that we actually consider the individuals in our streets and do whatever it takes to help give them the realization that they can still be in control of their lives. Changing attitudes from the public, coupled together with community supportive housing initiatives, might be just the recipe needed to combat the epidemic of homelessness in the communities that we strive so hard to maintain. What standards are we leaving for our children when we don't expel the least amount of effort to ensure that the future generations are cared for in civilized, ethical ways? Some people may feel as though the efforts they put into assisting those in need is a wasted one. I've heard many people say to me, "Oh, they're just going to take the money I give them for food and use it to get drunk." So let me pose a question in response. If you were homeless and you realized some small amount of comfort in being intoxicated, felt like drinking was a kind of miniature escape from your situation, however temporary, wouldn't you be tempted to do the same thing? In societies all over the world, there are programs to help people deal with life-controlling issues like drugs and alcohol. But where are the treatment programs for those people with a real psychological dependence on it? Even the most respected shelter programs I've had the pleasure of working with have a zero-tolerance policy for alcohol. Now, I'm not condoning alcoholism, nor am I ignorant to the safety concerns that these organizations must take in order to maintain their ability to help. But if someone is an addict, does that mean that they should be of no concern to the rest of us? What if, instead of churning these people away, we work with them where they are, on their terms, to help them realize their self-worth? Is it possible that we could actually do more good for them, in turn doing more good for the rest of the community by improving their situations wherever they are, instead of only dealing with them when it's comfortable for the rest of us? As for me, I'm not willing to raise my children with the kind of blatant disregard for humanity that is often shown to those who are the most in need. My children will grow up with an instilled concern for their neighbors, no matter what their situation might be, and with the sense of responsibility that it takes to make a difference in the lives of those around them. I'm going to raise my children to be more aware of others than everyone else seems to be aware of themselves. I'm going to raise my children in a world where the golden rule that is so familiar to most of us is going to be practiced intensely, with no regard to race, religion, creed, or nationality. If we don't take our desire to help to the streets and train up our children to do better with the world than we have, then we have no real legacy to leave in this world. My time spent on this earth is worth more than that, and I believe that most of you would agree with me. I believe that if you're not part of the solution, then you are in fact part of the problem. If you're interested in becoming part of the solution, then join us. Together, we can make a real difference. It's time that we take responsibility for the world we live in. Where others have failed, we will succeed, because we are the generation that's not going to sit back and watch our communities crumble on account of the weak moral standards that are all around us. We know what's right. Now we have to do something with that knowledge. Please feel free to contact us via email or visit our website at www.blindinglight.org. Thank you for your time, and God bless.